It's very easy, or rather, it's almost inevitable, depending on many factors, to be misjudged and to have opportunities opportunities not available to certain individuals based upon the biases, the discrimination, the prejudices, the sexism, and the prescribed notion that you're guilty. A lot of people, a lot of individuals, especially in the US of A, are presumed to be guilty until innocent. And then there are those within those certain career types or fields of work who abuse their power. So, for instance, if you are in an area that is known for crime and the criminals, whether they're criminals or not, but the assumed criminals or the stereotyped, archetype criminal has a certain appearance, then if you happen to look like those ones that are detained, then it's almost inevitable and unavoidable that very soon you, looking like the assumed criminals, are going to be detained as well. And this has happened to me more times than I had desired, and it's happened to me more times than I ever would wish. It's disgusting, and it's entirely unjustifiable. However, let's say, and then how the punishing goes on, or the consequences. Now, whether an individual is guilty or not, what tends to happen is this overlooking of criminals. So a lot of criminals slip through the cracks because they are not the perceived criminal. So with their physical appearance, they are not assumed to be the subjects of which are assumed to be the criminals, which works in their behalf. But instead, what happens is individuals like myself and many others who are constantly being judged and watched and assumed to be some type of villain or some type of terrorist or some type of evildoer, which is so far from the truth, and it's insulting. The reason why it's insulting is because I know without a shadow of a doubt, I know that there have been on many occasions where I'm being judged and I'm being accused of the very things that the ones who are able to consequence and punish, the ones who are able to punish and to consequence someone like me, are the ones who are doing these so-called, what they consider to be crimes themselves. So they're doing it themselves. And you're calling, that's hypocrisy, and it's insulting, it's disgusting. So I'm supposed to take it seriously, or supposed to just take the abuse with a smile? No. And yeah, I find it very demeaning and ungodly, because being accused of being a thief, being accused of being a liar or a cheater or a a false or a fraud, and then it's difficult because then you're put into this position, or not even put into this position. You're left with no other choice but to either just, for me, I just stayed true to myself. I'd rather be um, I'd rather be accepted or or hated, not accepted but hated because I'm being myself rather than to be loved, being something else that's not me. But yeah, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. It happens all the time, and it's disgusting. And I guess a parallel that I could use to try and make sense of it would be the family dynamic of this mafia of narcissists. How they have the golden children and then they have their scapegoats. That's how society is ran. You have your golden children and then you have your scapegoats. Where oftentimes the males and certain types of males are scapegoated and certain types of females are scapegoated. And then there's and then there's outliers. Okay? And then the outliers are like unicorns, and unicorns being because I've never seen a unicorn, so not to say that it does not exist, I've just yet to have witnessed and seen it. That's why we call it unicorn. Um, so yeah, the golden children of the U.S. of A um, would be the European Caucasian American white woman, and I say that because this is not this privilege or golden child status does not extend to all Caucasian European women and females. There are a large amount who are mistreated, and those ones of the Caucasian European descent who are mistreated often were not programmed in the U.S. of A. And I would even go so far as to say their stories should really be heard. We don't get to hear from them. There's a reason why we don't get to hear from them. We don't really see them, and then it feeds this machine, and it feeds this thing of being apathetic to people in general, or being prejudiced, very prejudiced, and we are all, I wouldn't say guilty of it, but we are all participants of being prejudiced. But being prejudiced saves lives in a lot of instances, not just some. It saves lives in a lot of instances and keeps you alive. It keeps you safe. But yeah, and then the other golden children would be the African, so-called African American, um, um, yeah, Black African American or of African descent, or of what do we call this? A status? Are we calling it a status or a race? Because I mean, this is kind of it's interchangeable, meaning that or it could be in reversal. You could consider it to be a status or of ethnicity. It happens, and sometimes they're interchangeable. And by that I mean, by black men. What do I mean by black men? This one is more. Now, this one seems to me, from my experience and from what I've been able to get from evidence, is that unlike the Caucasian European female, is that the males of African or so-called the identified, what people are labeled, the accepted concept of African male is accepted. But the ones who are not, the outliers would be the ones who tell the truth and the ones who are resistant against, or just basically they're scapegoated. If you don't go along with this theme or with the narrative of either whether it's of the racist narrative or the sexist narrative, or the LGBTQ narrative, or the political Dem Republic narrative. If you're not following those notions and concepts, then you're definitely going to be placed in the scapegoat section, which now the scapegoat section has a variety of people in the scapegoat section, but it seems to be the common denominator amongst the scapegoats is that they're either honest, they love truth, or they're the critical thinkers. Those are most certainly one of the traits that the scapegoats tend to have, is that they're able to see they're able to point out what's going on. If you're able to point out what's going on and you see something wrong, or if you're a person who uses morality, or an empathic, if you're a highly sensitive person, if you're rebellious, anarchist, any of those. And sadly, these groups of the scapegoated class, they tend to be mislabeled, and then they're harmed. They're harmed, and it's disgusting, because those are the very people who make this world worth living in. Had it not been for brave people who stood up, even when it was unpopular. And that's what the scapegoats are, is they stand up for truth. They do what's right even when it's unpopular. See, anyone could, it's not anyone, but let's go with the, I guess you could say, flying monkey, or should we say the aware monkey? Because there's enablers. There are the enablers. Now, whether they are aware of the structure or not, it's all a vicious cycle of narcissism, underdog, scapegoat, sacrificial lamb, and Jesus. It's like they want the scapegoat Jesus to die for all of their sins, and that's the issue. Or they want the devil they want to be able to blame the devil for everything, instead of really just, seriously, it's like, but the greatest part, I suppose, not the great part as in something to be proud of, great as in I'm awestruck at how deceptive and how innately evil it is, because they're I'll give them this, is that how they're able to operate is rather clever, and it takes a certain type of but it's not a matter of me being proud about it. It's just, I suppose you would give credit where credit is due, I suppose, but I'm not coming from that aspect. As in, they're very divisive and deceptive, and very just very cunning, cutthroat. It's very, wow, it's chaotic, it's atrocious, and it's venomous, poisonous. But yeah, that's what the society does. And who else are some golden children? The other golden children are just outliers. The outliers tend to be the golden children outliers tend to be the sports crew, and by sports crew I mean athletic department. So the currently or soon to be NFL football type, college football jock, okay, or Olympic. Those are usually another set. Or famous entertainer, that's another set. Another set would be the religious sector. A lot of them, it's any of those news reporters. It's sad. It's unbearable. It's just a circus. It's a huge freaking circus. And the awful part is that They don't care who they end up torturing. This happens. You see it happen even in the so-called, elite. You see it. They cut off. They cut off, or they make it stop. They put a big stop to anyone who voices the truth. Anytime you take a notice and see that if they tell the truth, or if they go against the tides of the accepted normalcy of play along or play dead, it's atrocious. But yeah, the narrative is that this is the narrative. The U.S. of A narrative is that all white people are racist, evil, and rich. All black people are victims and poor and slaves or descendants of slaves. That's the narrative. And then all Hispanics are from Mexico, and all of the Asians are intelligent with high IQs and play video games. That's the stereotypical accepted normalcy and what wants and oh yeah, and then all white girls are damsels of distress. All black girls are whores and prostitutes and gold diggers with 10 baby dads. And all white men are KKK club members. KKK club members, and they're white supremacists. But they're good Christians. And I'm not saying that these stereotypes don't have an audience or don't have participants. They do. However, that is not what the scapegoats or myself or anyone says. We don't accept people's box. And the thing is anytime that you try to go outside of that box, outside of what is set up for what character role you were given, if you go outside of that box, then not only will people from other groups try to push you in, but it seems to be the ones who work the hardest to put you back into that box are the people that you're supposed to identify with, and that becomes an issue because whether you truly are a part of that group or not is not up to the flying monkeys and golden children, and that's the issue that I have. Is like you don't get to tell me who I am. Furthermore, is that if you are going to go about it this way, then why not just be as bold as you already are? Because they are very bold. I mean, how else would they be able to pull this off if they weren't? I mean, whether we want to admit that or not, is they are very bold indeed. And this whole thing about, my thing is, wow, they really hide behind religion, they hide behind children, they hide behind these institutions. I have much more respect for the one that goes, I hate you, and here's my reason. I got respect for that one. But the ones who smile and say, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus, or my black sister, my queen, or whatever, Becky, oh my God, look at her butt. Okay, those are all stereotypes and me pretending, right? But that's usually what happens, is that some of the most incredibly evil people, or operators, I suppose, some of the most vicious and vile ones are the ones who come off as being something decent or something, not to be afraid of. Or, excuse me, I won't even say that. Or someone who is sweet and oh so kind. Those are the ones I question. And furthermore, as far as fear, well, it's temporary. What do we say?